Okay, so last lecture we left off with the exclusions that show up in Part D. Now I want to move on to talk about the limits. So what is the insurance company actually going to pay you? Well, there's a maximum they're going to pay you, and that maximum is the actual cash value of your vehicle, right? That's the most they'll pay. And this makes sense, right? So the most they'll pay you is going to be actual cash value minus whatever deductible you choose, right? They can't pay you more than that. Right? They can't settle losses at replacement cost. And hopefully that makes sense, right? If they were going to give me replacement costs, if they're going to buy me a brand new car, if something happens to my car, I have a huge incentive to make sure that something happens to my car so I can get a brand new one, right? That's moral hazard. We're not going to encourage that. We're not going to give replacement cost insurance in auto insurance. There's no way to get that. The most we're going to give is actual cash value minus the deduction for depreciation, whatever that ends up being. I'm sorry, minus the deductible that you've chosen, not deduction for depreciation. That's the definition of ACV. We'll give that, then we're going to subtract out the deductible that you've chosen. So it can happen where the cost to fix your car would be more than the actual cash value, right? Especially if you have an older car. Got an older car, market value is probably $5,000. I destroy it. Yeah, it could be rebuilt for 10. Nobody's going to give me 10 to fix my car. That's only worth 5. What they'll do is they'll say, well, your car's worth $5,000. You got a $500 deductible. Here's your check for $4,500 when we total it out. So otherwise, we're paying the cost to repair, or we're paying actual cash value minus the deductible, whichever is less, right? If we can fix it, we're going to fix it. If it costs more than the car is worth, then we'll give you the value of the car minus whatever deductible you've got. We'll call that a total loss. It is allowable for an insurance company to only pay for generic parts to fix the car. There was a huge lawsuit about this. State Farm was the defendant, and the plaintiffs were saying, look, State Farm, you're not paying for original equipment manufactured parts. You're saving money by using generic parts. We don't think you should be able to do that. State Farm said, well, if you want us to replace with original parts, we can do that, but we'd have to charge more for insurance. That's why we have an endorsement that if that's important to you, you can endorse your policy, but most people don't care. So we're going to help people save money by allowing generic parts to be used for replacement. You don't have to use original equipment manufacturer parts. If that's important to you, make sure you ask your insurance company about that endorsement. Not terribly expensive. It's the kind of thing that if it matters to you, you would want to make sure you've got that coverage. Then we have to talk real quickly about gap insurance. So it can happen sometimes, particularly with valuable cars, where there's a big difference between the actual cash value of the car and how much you owe on that car, right? Quick example, maybe I buy a $25,000 car. I have to borrow $25,000 to get that car. I borrow the entire amount. I don't put anything down. Okay, 3 days later, I total the car. Right? Can't sue somebody else. It's my fault, my accident. All I have is my collision insurance to look at. Well, when you drive a brand new car off the lot, you've probably heard this said that it loses about a quarter of its value instantly. I mean, if you buy a car and you take it off the lot and then you bring it back to the same dealer, you're going to see you'll take a really big haircut there. That's the fair market value. You've paid a ton of that is going to be lost, especially on the brand new vehicle. So I buy a brand new $25,000 vehicle. I wreck it, my insurance company might say, yeah, the actual cash value of that car is $21,000 and you have a $500 deductible. So here is your check for $20,500. My problem is I'm getting $20,500 from my insurance company. I owe $25,000 and I no longer have a car. So I'm out $4,500 in 3 days. That's pretty impressive. How do we prevent that problem? Gap insurance is something that is a specific product that applies to help you with that. Let me go ahead and define out how this works. All right. So if we're talking about gap insurance, if you buy this product, it pays the difference between ACV and the amount owed on a lease or a loan. A lease is the same problem. That's not your car. And so you have to continue to make those payments, or you have to settle up right there and pay them. And you're not going to, on a new car with a lease, it's always a new car. Well, there might be example where it's not, but usually with a lease, most of the time you're talking about new cars, it's very likely that you owe more than what the car is worth in the very early months of the lease in particular. And that's very possible with the loan as well. So if you buy gap insurance, this is a separate product, then we will guarantee that if that situation happens to you, we'll pay the amount that you owe, and you won't have to worry about that gap. That's why it's called gap insurance. So with leases and loans, sometimes it's actually wrapped into the loan or the lease itself, and you're paying for it and you just don't know. Sometimes the dealer will force you to do that because they're the ones who are at risk, right? If they're doing the financing, whoever's financing is at risk. If the dealer finances you for $25,000 and you wreck it and you come back with a check for $21,000, the dealer's going to say, "What about the other $4,000? You still owe us that." And they're the ones ultimately on the hook. So some dealers will actually make you buy gap insurance and they'll roll it into the price of the loan and you won't even realize that you're paying for it. I mean, at least you have it in that situation. State Farm, for a while, they had a promotion where if you borrowed money to finance your car through them, through their bank, they would provide you gap insurance for free. Neat little thing that they can do with cross-selling, right? I mean, this is right in their wheelhouse. They do this anyway. The marginal cost for them to issue gap insurance is minor. And it's a way to attract people to borrow from you that otherwise might not. So they were packaging that into their deals. Otherwise, if it doesn't come with that, if you're buying a brand new vehicle and you're using borrowed money to do that, you might want to think about that. Obviously, you've got the same problem if you didn't borrow money, right? You paid $25,000 of your own money to buy this car, you wreck it, you get 21 back, or 20,500 in my example after deductible. Yeah, you're out $4,500. If you can afford that, and it's probably different if you actually had 25,000 in cash to buy a vehicle, maybe that's a risk you're willing to take. But gap insurance typically is not very expensive. You're not going to save a lot of money by avoiding it. If you're buying a brand new car and it's possible you could wreck it in the early months, it's worth thinking about purchasing gap insurance. So that's a note that we want to talk about here. Okay. So that's part D. That finishes off that pretty well. Now, part E and part F, I don't want you necessarily to memorize that part E and part F deal with general provisions and after accident and loss conditions. These are conditions. These are things you have to agree to do. I just want you to know you have to do these things. It doesn't matter to me if you associate them correctly with part E or part F. I don't think that's the important part. The important part is knowing what exists. So this first slide is just stuff that might not even be in the contract, but you need to know this. If you get into a car accident, somebody's hurt, call an ambulance. Sometimes you sit there and you think to yourself, well, I don't know, could I take him to the hospital myself? You're risking making the problem worse. There can be internal injuries. You might not see them. Let professionals deal with that. If somebody's hurt, call an ambulance. Your liability will pay for that. That's the idea. If it's somebody else that you've hurt, if you are hurt, your medical payments would cover for that. And at least the ambulance part of the ride, most Part B limits would be enough to cover that. So yeah, it's real dangerous to be trying to take that on yourself. It's worth calling an ambulance if you think somebody's hurt. That's just kind of a common sense thing. You should also be calling the police to report the accident. If there's any bodily injury, you have to. And if property damage is greater than $500, you have to call police by law. Now, here's the thing. It's hard to estimate how much damage is done, but $500 of car damage really isn't very much. That could be a dent and a fender. If they have to replace a quarter panel, that's going to cost more than $500. And there you go. You're supposed to call the police anyway. So in general, if there's any property damage, call the police. People are reluctant to do this, but you're protecting yourself when that happens. Why do I say that? Oh, okay. So somebody hits you in an accident and just fender bender stuff. They just damage your car. You're fine. You don't think there's any injury. And they say, oh, please, please, please don't call the police. I'll handle it. I'll pay for it. I'll report it to my insurer. We'll get it paid for. And you say, oh, well, this guy seems like a nice guy and he's doing the right thing. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we won't call the police. Yeah, and then you know what happens? Police show up at your door 3 hours later and they say, yeah, we understand you were involved in a hit and run that was your fault and you fled the scene. And you say, wait a minute, that's not what happened. The guy said that he was going to take care of it. Yep, and now it's your word against his. If you call the police, that won't happen. Then you get an official record of what happened. Any eyewitnesses, you're going to want to hang on to them if you have anything. But having the police right there can help you with the fault part. Otherwise, if you let somebody go without calling the police, they can just they can report it themselves and tell them it was your fault. What are you going to do? You're protecting yourself when you call the police on an auto accident. So yeah, if there's any property damage, you should be doing that. And for sure, if there's bodily injury, you have to call police. That's the law. So you're protecting yourself by doing that. That's why I say it's a common sense thing to do. You have an accident, you call the police. Let them be the ones to tell you, oh, well, we're not going to come out and worry about that. You have to handle that yourself. All right, if they say it, then I guess you have to. But at least you've got a record that you made the call and you did what you were supposed to do. Assuming you're dealing with somebody who's rational, yeah, you exchange names and addresses and insurance companies. Sometimes people get really, really angry. Don't put your safety at risk. If you got to lock the doors and wait for the police to get there, so be it. I hope that's not what's going to happen. But you got to protect yourself. But you cannot leave. That's the thing. If you leave, then you risk getting tagged with hit and run, and that's a felony. And now you got big problems. And then right away, you want to report the accident to the insurance company. You don't have to feel bad about this. They're not going to yell at you. They do this. The people on the other end of the line, this is all they do. They take phone calls 24 hours a day. In a normal shift, they're going to deal with 20 claims. This is their everyday life. They're used to this. And they should be making you feel better about this and telling you, okay, here's what you do to help you get through this. Because for you, this is probably unusual. For them, this is everyday stuff. You don't have to feel bad about it. And that's why we want you to report as soon as you can. That's a condition of the contract. As far as contractually what you have to do, yeah, you have to cooperate with the insurance company in the investigation. And if there's a settlement, as they're going through this process to settle the claim, they're going to need your help. You're probably going to have to give a sworn statement about what happened at a minimum. Then you might actually have to go as far as giving depositions for use in court or actually testifying in court. You have to agree to do that. Remember, we've got coverage that will pay you for your loss of earnings. But you have to agree to do that. If you're not going to do that, then coverage doesn't apply. So that's a condition of the contract. Any legal papers you get, you got to forward copies on to the insurance company. You agree to do that. That's a condition. If you're claiming benefits, so this is going to be Part B or Part C, you might have to be evaluated by a doctor that the insurance company recommends. You can get your own medical treatment wherever you want, but in addition, you have to have somebody that they've approved also check you out. You have to be willing to do that. This is common. Anytime you get payments from your own insurance company, they're going to want to verify, especially when it's expensive, that you're complying with treatment, that what's being recommended is appropriate. And so they do that by saying, look, if you want to get benefits from us, you have to be followed by our doctors. If you need medical care, you go wherever you want. At some point, you're going to have to check in with people that we approve if we don't already approve the people who you're already going to. If you have property damage, then you have to protect your vehicle from further damage. And you also have to let the insurance company look at the vehicle before you decide to repair it. Okay. So, you can't go fix your vehicle before the insurance company's had a chance to look at it. You have to let them look at it. Otherwise, you're taking the risk that if you get it fixed, they may say, we're not going to pay for that. That was too expensive. We don't even know what we should have done. You got to let them look at it. It's easy now. I mean, now you can take a picture. You can do this all over an app for a simple accident, which is amazing. I mean, before, think about it. They had to send somebody out, verify that there's been an accident, take their own pictures, come back, come up with their own estimate. Now we've got people who can do that over the phone. You take your own picture. We don't even have to send somebody out. We'll just go ahead and we're able to approve a certain amount because we have enough experience. Oh, yeah, the side is damaged. Okay, well, we know that that's a $2,000 repair. So we'll authorize that. You go get your estimate. And then we'll agree to pay for it. And the whole thing can be taken care of in a couple of days, which is really nice. So that's coverage under Coverage D. Remember, that's damage to your auto. Then there's just some general provisions that I wanted to talk about. So these are things I want you to know. You don't have to associate them with Part F. That's not the important part as far as I'm concerned. But I do want you to know about these factors here. All right, sorry about that. You don't realize that I had to pause for a long time there, but I have an angry baby and a barking dog, and it's been fun to try to get to record this in those circumstances. But anyway, okay, so wanted to talk about these general provisions. These are things, again, I don't expect you to associate with Part F. I just want you to know these key things. So coverage is provided in the U.S. and the territories, Canada, Puerto Rico. There is one place you can drive where you would not be covered. What is it? Yeah, it's Mexico. It'd be real easy to drive to Mexico. You need to know you're not covered if you choose to do that. Canada, you're fine. Interestingly, Puerto Rico and the territories, you can't drive there. But if you were to rent a car there, your coverages would go with you. Any other foreign country, if you're in a foreign country, you probably do not have insurance coverage. And that's something that you need to know. Now, this is where those credit card benefits can come in really valuable when you're renting a car in a foreign country. A lot of them will actually provide coverage in those places. Some of them will exclude certain countries. You're in a foreign country, you probably need to get insurance through the rental car agency. Whereas when you're in the US, I would say if you've got collision and other than collision coverage, you probably don't. So the biggest thing about this one, though, is you're not covered in Mexico. Mexico has required auto insurance just like the US does. So if you drive down there and you get pulled over, you don't have insurance, I don't know what happens. I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to be in another country where they're telling me that I've broken their law. That doesn't sound like a fun situation. So if you drive to Mexico, all the big insurers have reciprocal operations with insurers that are licensed in Mexico. It's not hard to get coverage. Call up your agent. Going to take a 2-week trip. We're just going down. I need to be covered down there. No problem. They'll get you handled. It's easy. But your policy itself, as it stands, does not provide you coverage in Mexico. So I wanted you to know that. Then I also wanted to talk about the cancellation conditions really quick. Okay. So just wanted to talk about those cancellation conditions. We've seen some of these before. If you've got a material misrepresentation on your application, that's grounds for the insurance company to cancel your policy even after you've had a claim. So this sometimes happens. Big accident, the insurance company is going to go back to the application, make sure everything on there is true. Because if there's something on there that isn't true, guess what? They don't have to pay. And this has happened. There's an example in the book. There was a case where somebody had 2 tickets and they did not report them. Now, normally an insurance company should be able to pull motor vehicle records. I don't know why that wasn't done. But in this case, for whatever reason, the insurance company didn't do that. And then this person got into an accident that was $100,000 liability. And the insurance company said, wait a minute, we've discovered that you actually had unreported accidents. And so we're going to call that material misrepresentation, and we're voiding coverage after the fact. The jury heard all the facts of the case, and they decided, yeah, you could have forgot about one of those moving violations, but not if you had 2. If you had 2 and you didn't report them, now it sounds like you were trying to mislead the insurance company. We're going to call that material misrepresentation, and that person ended up not having coverage. So again, we have this example of this person thinks they're getting one over on the insurance company. What they're really doing is making sure they don't have any coverage at all. That's foolish. So tell the truth on these applications. There's no way to get one over. They've thought about this stuff. Everything, they've seen everything. So just be careful there. That's really important. That's that utmost good faith doctrine. If your driver's license gets canceled, not suspended, canceled. So the state has come in and said, legally, you are not allowed to drive. That's a pretty serious thing. If you are legally not allowed to drive, well, yeah, we're going to cancel your insurance policy because you're not supposed to be driving. Suspension usually comes with conditions, so that's different. So we're not talking about license suspensions. We're talking about cancellations. If a state tells you you may not drive, yep, at that point, we're going to consider your auto insurance void. And it shouldn't matter because you're not supposed to be driving, right? And then finally, we know failure to pay premium. Yeah, that's usually why a policy gets canceled. So a lot of these policies are written for 6 months, but they're paid for monthly. And so you'll have coverage in force and a payment that's due. And if you go past that date, you don't pay your premium, it's canceled. And so that's a difficult position to be in. You do not want to have an accident and then find out that your policy was canceled because you failed to pay a premium. And that's, again, same thing. Outside of that, you can't cancel a policy. If it's in force, you got to wait till the end of the 6 months, and then you can non-renew, but that's different. Not renewing at the end of the contract is different from canceling something that's in force. And you usually, depending on the state, you have to give notice that you intend to non-renew so that the person has time to shop around and find replacement. But outside of these 3 conditions, you cannot cancel an auto insurance policy. Now, you as the individual, you can cancel anytime. You're not happy, something happened, whatever, you found a better deal somewhere else, doesn't matter. Call up your insurance company. I want to cancel today. No problem. They'll send you the balance of your unused premium, right? Because you always have to pay in advance. There will always be some premium that was not used. Therefore, that you're entitled to that. And there are no conditions on your ability to cancel. If you're an insurance company, you're stuck with one of those 3. So just like we talked about before. All right, that's a really good place to stop because that's kind of the end of the policy itself. The next topic is, how does auto insurance work with society? And so that'll be the topic of the next few lectures that we talk about in this unit. Thanks a lot, you guys. Questions, let me know, and we'll do the best we can.